Fantasy and Some Flights, exploring the realms of beer, board games, books, and bourbon.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy and Some Flights podcast. I'm Nelson.
I'm Dalton.
And tonight we have a special guest with us, my wife, Smalls. How you doing, Smalls?
Good.
AKA the
Yes, this is my nemesis. I mean, wait, hold on. No, my
Favorite person in the world?
Favorite person in the world. That is right.
Yes.
Also, the person that always kicks my ass at board games.
Very
so
true.
we are really happy to have you on. So thank you for coming on.
For sure. She's submitted enough icebreaker questions to earn a spot on the podcast.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, so we figured we'd finally bring her on, especially to talk about a game that she is really good at and I am not. So we wanted to bring in the experts. So today we are talking about, or we're doing a deep dive analysis on Through the Ages. So by Vlaada Chvatil, one of, it's top 10 board game on Board Game Geek, right? It's highly acclaimed, a great game. And so we wanted to do a deep dive on that because I know that Smalls has been playing a lot. Dalton plays a good bit as well, and I don't, but I always enjoy getting my butt kicked. So I'm excited for the conversation. But before we dive into our analysis of Through the Ages, we are all drinking. So we're going to do kind of a flight section. So Dalton, do you want to start us out? What's on your flight tonight?
Yeah, I'll start us out tonight. So I am drinking Avery Brewing White Rascal. So Avery Brewing is in Boulder, Colorado. If you're not familiar with the area, that's like just a little bit north of Denver and a little bit south of where I'm at. So White Rascal is a Belgian-style white ale. I got this one for like mowing the lawn. You know, this is my outdoor, we just...
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought someone paid you for mowing their grass, and then they gave it to you. But no, okay,
yes,
so
I got it for
understand.
the activity of
a little slow
mowing my own lawn. Because we moved, and so we moved into a new house, which is really exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And as a part of that, we get like a million house projects, and so I needed like a project beer. And so this is my project beer. I really like Belgian styles and just like light ales for that type of thing anyway, so... 5.6%. It's not going to make me irresponsible with a screwdriver, so that's nice. It already has like some orange peel in it, and it also lists like coriander, which is kind of interesting. I don't have enough of a palate to actually taste coriander, but
I don't even know what coriander tastes like.
Exactly, I couldn't pick it out of the lineup. But we'll often add orange, or like an orange slice to like a Blue Moon, which is another like Belgian style ale, right? So the fact that it's already kind of coming with that is pretty nice. So I'm definitely enjoying it. I would give it a three cheers.
Oh, okay.
Avery Brewing is new to me. I'm finding overall that Colorado beers are much better than Colorado whiskeys, which is a little unfortunate for me because I like whiskey so much. But the microbrew scene is really well established, and the micro distilling scene is still kind of in its infancy. So,
3 cheers for the Belgian. So, Smalls, what is on your flight tonight?
I'm drinking moonshine, naturally. So we went to Gatlinburg for a vacation, and then so we went to the old Smoky Moonshine Distillery, and then they were having a deal of 6 things of moonshine for the price of 5.
Yep.
So we got 6 different ones. So I'm drinking some Hunch Punch.
We didn't want to
with
lose
lemonade.
money.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a deal you can walk away from.
Yeah.
No, literally, we couldn't quite walk away.
That was after the tasting, so.
Yeah, it was after we tasted, 12
different
moonshines?
Yeah.
Yeah, they treat you good there.
Yeah, they had to limit number of tastings you could have. You right.
Sorry, I cut you off. You are having Hunch Punch?
Yeah, it's Hunch Punch flavored mixed with lemonade. And it tastes like Hawaiian Punch.
I love it. It's
nice.
very dangerous.
It's true. It's very easy to drink.
It is very easy to drink.
Yeah.
What? So, we kind of do the cheers rating. Like 1, you would never drink it again. 4, if you see it, you buy it. So on a rating of 1 cheers to 4 cheers, what would you give the Hunch Punch lemonade combo?
Do you do half cheers? Or do I have to pick 3 or
do
I have to pick a round number?
You have to pick a round number.
I would give...
Nelson's tried this game before, too.
I'd give it a 4. I'm going to drink this as often as it's available.
Okay, I love it. 4
Very
cheers.
nice.
Let's go. Perfect. Alrighty, and then on my flight, I'm actually drinking something that I would not really consider a craft beer, but I saw it at the store, so I felt like I needed to pick it up. And so this is Yuengling's Oktoberfest. So Yuengling is a kind of like the go-to cheap beer now that if I can find it, right? If I had to pick one that I'm just going to buy like 30 of them, I'm going to go with Yingling. And so the Oktoberfest is, it's October, it's exciting, I just never had it before, right? So I picked it up. It's okay. I mean, we've talked on the podcast before that Oktoberfest are Oktoberfest beers. There's nothing super special about them. You could probably mix them all together and they're probably going to taste just about the same. And so, I mean, and that's kind of what this Yingling is. So in that sense, it's a 2.5. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I would say it's a 3 cheers for me. The price point was pretty good. I think it was like, it was right around, it was a little bit over $1 a beer.
Okay.
Cheaper than like a lot of the craft beers. And so, I'm not tasting way higher quality out of the ones that you're spending more money on for an Oktoberfest. So this Yingling Oktoberfest is, it's good. It's good. I would pick it up if it's October. If it's March, I would not pick it up. I would be concerned about that actually. But outside of that, it's a 1 cheers in March and a 3 cheers in October.
Right? Isn't it September? I'm just throwing this out there.
Is September.
It's September.
It is September. So I guess it is a 2 cheers.
Yeah, but it's October for the listeners. So
yeah.
Okay, never mind. You good.
So instead of like our normal table section, what we're going to do is we're going to put Smalls on the hot seat and we're going to ask her a couple of questions, which we did. No, we should just change them. That would be fun. That'd be really fun. No,
that'd be very rude.
So we're gonna get to know our guest host tonight. So Smalls, let's start out with an easier one. What is your favorite board game?
It's probably my favorite board game is probably Spirit Island.
That's a great choice.
Like I don't. I feel like
they're such a cute couple.
I know. It works so well that we can play it together. It's weird how that works out. But yeah, there's so much replayability, literally always.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite spirit to play as?
I like the offensive ones, and I get to kill lots of things at one time.
Yep. It sounds about right.
Literally.
Nice.
That theme will come back later tonight in this. Do you think Spirit Island has like your guys' most like playtime, like as a couple? Because Nelson has like Marvel Champions will throw things off.
The stupid stuff.
What do you think?
That's the one we've played the most as a couple. Yeah. What are you thinking? Terraforming Mars?
No, I think it's the Crew.
Oh, yeah, the Crew might.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's addictive.
Yeah, I think the Crew is our, besides Marvel Champions, like my most played time-wise. So if you're counting games that we play with other people, I think it would be the Crew. If it's just games that the two of us play, then it would definitely be Spirit Island. Yeah. Terraforming Mars may be up there, but that was way before I started tracking. And all of those games start to run together.
Yeah, it's fallen off our radar.
Awesome. I love that choice, obviously. So, and I think I'm really glad that you like that choice too, because it means that I get to play it. So,
yeah, that works out really well for you.
Yeah, it really does. Alrighty, so moving into the other half of our kind of world, what is your favorite book?
Well, okay. Currently, I'm literally obsessed with the author Sarah J. Maas, and I just finished her Throne of Glass series, and it's like the main character is like female assassin person, and it's pretty dope. There are 7 books, and then like multiple novellas, and I crammed that out in like a couple weeks.
It was absurd. I didn't see my wife for like 3 weeks. It was crazy.
I could not stop. It's fine. I do not have a problem.
So Dalton, I did buy the first Throne of Glass novel on Audible. So
sweet! I was about to ask that.
I plan on listening to through the first one.
Do it.
Yeah, so that was highly encouraged, borderline threatening from Smalls.
I don't know if it was borderline.
That's fair.
It was definitely threatening.
It was pretty close. Yeah.
Divorce was thrown out there.
I mean, but that's often. So like.
No, I'm excited to read that though because I'm working my way through Dune. We have a Dune episode coming up.
Yeah.
A Dune analysis episode coming up. And so I'm like working my way through rereading that. And then I was kind of, I don't know, scoping out what could come next after that. So that if you've already bought it, especially, it's like, well, okay.
Might as well, right?
Might as well. This is a freebie. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. Yeah. Then there's only, if we like it, there's only 6 more to buy.
Plus novellas.
Plus novellas. So.
Yeah.
Plus novellas.
Get it pumped.
Yeah. All I'm saying, Dalton, is that this is yet another excuse to push off the reading of Wheel of Time. So,
Yeah, exactly.
at some point,
Also,
you will read it.
Also, the last, I think I'm right in saying this. The last 7-book series that I completed was terrible.
Well, no one said you didn't have loyalty.
Right, exactly. It was the
What, you gave it the old college try?
This is The Unwanteds, which is actually the one that was recommended by Eric Lang.
Okay, yeah.
That I read, and then I said, don't read this because it's bad. But I'm also 5 books into. I need to pick up the Witcher series again, which I believe is a 7-book series. And so, if this one, if you're, what's the name of the series again?
Throne of Glass.
If the Witcher series doesn't do it, then the Throne of Glass series might do it for me. So
there's a lot of comparisons of the main character to Jack Sparrow in Parts of the Caribbean.
Oh,
That's the
very
kind of
nice.
energy that she gives
Okay.
off. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, there's loads of memes that it's just Jack Sparrow saying something but her name over it.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm excited to check that one out. Alrighty. And we didn't prepare you for this one, but I just thought about it.
No.
What is your favorite drink?
Just in general in life.
Yeah. Alcoholic, of course.
Any pink wine? I don't know.
Okay. Classy.
I have an irrational thought that if wine is pink, then it's probably delicious. And so anytime I'm just yeah, is it pink? I want that one.
I feel like that's probably a fair judgment call.
Right? It seems reasonable.
Yeah.
it's made
Nice.
to be tasty.
Yeah.
Awesome. We got Spirit Island, Throne of Glass, and pink wine. That's my wife right there.
Yep.
So,
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
in a nutshell. Alrighty, so let's move into the main topic of tonight, which is the discussion about Vlaada Chvatil's Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization. So this game was published in 2015, and it's a rework or a revamp 2.0 of a game that was published in 2006 by Vlaada Chvatil called Through the Ages, A Story of Civilization. So I'm guessing what happened is that he put that down as a working title and forgot to change it before they sent it to the publisher. So
Right. But it's a super important distinction. You really need to get the new in there.
yes. And so
They changed
that
the box art, so that's helpful.
They did change the box art, and it confused me for the longest time. I did not realize that there were two different games. I'm actually not sure what the difference is. Do you know anything about that, Dalton?
I've never played it. No, I assume it's just a
I got nothing.
rebalancing. I have no idea.
That's kind of what I'm guessing as well. Anyways, we're talking about the new story of civilization, the one that's ranked 9 on BGG. So it's top 10. It's been up there for a long time.
Yeah, I think it peaked at 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
It got really high at one point.
And I mean, there's a reason for that. All of that being said, it is a heavy game. So on Board Game Geek, it weights out at a 4.41 out of 5. So this is, I think, the second heaviest game in our collection, with the first one being On Mars. So 4.41 out of 5. And that is mainly because it is a sandbox civilization game. So, Dalton, do you want to give us a kind of brief overview of what you are doing in Through the Ages?
Yeah, sure. And I would also comment that the reason that the complexity is so high is strictly because of happy faces and how they work.
I'm still not sure what those are.
Right.
Sometimes I know that
way
people
it
are
works,
mad at me, and then I lose the game.
the way that they work is that the app does it for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Through the Age, if you played any of Sid Meier's Civilization games, this is themed for that. Sid Meier's actually a leader in the game, right? So the IP for that was kind of given to Vlaada for this game. So it feels very similar. It is a 4X game. I think it's one of the only 4X games that we've talked about that is not a dudes on a map game. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It has an exterminate portion, right? It does meet that for 4X. But there's not fighting over a map or whatever involved in it. But at the start of the game, you're in, whatever it calls it, ancient times or something like that. Age of Antiquity, I think is maybe the name of it. And you're starting and you can recruit leaders like Moses or whatever. And you have basic bronze working, and you have all your little workers. And they can make, food, they can make resources to build things. They can make science, they can make culture, and they can make happy faces for you. Or they can be turned into strength for military and stuff. And then the point of the game is you're kind of researching things from a common river over the course of the game. You pull these cards down, right? And you can research them, and that allows you to build more complicated types of buildings. This is kind of simulating the advance of technology. And then you can use your food to get more people. You can use your resources to build those people into things. And then your point of your game is to try and score culture. Culture can be scored directly, or at the end of the game, there will be like some bonuses that the players actually get to decide, which is one of the fun mechanics of the game. Just kind of based on like your position at the end of the game. So are you the strongest player? Do you have the most technology? Do you have the most food production? Do you, things like that. Winning scores for this game get like super confusing, right? Like they have this really wide range because one thing that, and I'm sure this will come up a lot in conversation, one thing that will really impact the score is like how aggressive are the players being to each other. If the players are like investing a lot of resources in their militaries to like grow their militaries and beat each other up, then they're going to have comparatively lower generally culture scores at the end of the game. If the players are kind of staying out of each other's ways, then they're investing all of their resources in engine building, and at the end of the game they can have these really crazy scores. So it's hard at the start of the game to feel like, how am I doing like relative to the other players? Even though it's being tracked like right in front of you, there's like a score tracker right in the middle of the board. It can sometimes be really hard to tell, even very late in the game, like who's going to end up winning.
Yeah, one of the things that I've come across in my plays is that you really kind of have to play the player, right? You cannot necessarily go into a game of Through the Ages with a strategy saying, hey, like this is what I'm going to do this game. It's very much oh, shoot, I see that Smalls is building up military. If I don't start building up my military to react, then I need to, like, I'm gonna get beat up on. I'm gonna lose the game.
Yeah, it's gonna plan to die. Like that's
right. And so there's a lot of kind of looking over the table. Oh, what's going on over there? What are we doing over here? And so it's very reading the table, what's going on, and it's unless every single player is playing siloed, you cannot really play a solitaire game. Do you disagree with that?
I always play like a solitaire, except for seeing if someone is strong, and then I'm like, I just want to be a little less strong than them, so they don't attack me, and then I can continue to do what I want.
Yeah. So okay, so we've talked about attacking. Smalls, can you describe what the method is? Or you keep saying attacking. What does that mean? Like what is the mechanism in the game that leads to a player attacking another player?
Yeah, so you can either, there's a like political action phase, and so you can either do like an aggression and try to take resources from another player, and that's based on military strength, or you can start like a war, and then each person has one turn to build up their military, and whoever's winning at the end is the winner and probably either takes resources or victory points.
So yes, you can play aggressions, and you play it against a certain player. So like if the three of us are playing a game, it comes up in the politics phase, which is the first phase on your turn. You can play an aggression, and what you were saying is you want it to be right below the leading aggressor, because if you're sitting at 10 military strength, I'm sitting at 9 military strength, and Dalton is sitting at 3 military strength, it's more advantageous for you to attack Dalton than it is me.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place to go first, because like the point of these analyses is like, how do we win the game, right? Like for a novice player trying to play at like an intermediate level kind of is where we generally try and scope these episodes. And military, it's just a really big part of the strategy of the game. And so I think this is a really good place to start. And Smalls is right. I would agree that being last can be extremely punishing, like very quickly, almost out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you can be in a position where you are last and like it goes around and you're like totally fine. Like, oh, nobody's really building up. And then everybody builds up a couple and you're like, oh, this maybe is kind of a problem. And then all of a sudden, like people play multiple aggressions on you, right? And one thing that the game allows you to do is if you are below in strength, right, you can use some of your political cards to try and like defend yourself, so you can basically make up the difference in strength against an aggression by like discarding political cards from your hand. And that usually works like once, right? But if it's going around the table, right, and Nelson does it to me and I like spend all my cards doing that, then I'm like basically totally defenseless. And even though Smalls isn't like that much ahead of me, all of a sudden she can beat me up, right? And so it can kind of pile on kind of quickly. The other thing I would say is that like because so many of the political cards are like strength based, not even like the aggressions, but like the ones that just go into the political deck, will say things like, the strongest player takes 4 culture from the weakest player or something like that. That just the fact that you're sitting in last place, even if nobody's playing aggressions, they're probably going to have to play some of those political cards. And that type of thing can start to pile up. And you can even start losing resources and destroying buildings. And all of a sudden you're like way behind without really a whole lot of opportunity to catch up.
I think that is one of the downfalls of the game, or I don't know if it's a downfall. It's a downside of the game. I feel like, we have this like whole, kill the leader aspect in a lot of games where if someone's out ahead, you kind of all target them. Whereas I feel like this is almost the opposite problem, where if someone's already losing, it's really easy to pile onto them and just beat them into the ground. I feel like you have to almost go into this game understanding that that's probably going to happen to at least one of the players at the table. And it feels a lot better when everyone understands that it's a game, because it can be a very brutal game, and feelings can get hurt depending on if that's not established beforehand, especially because it can be a 4-6 hour long game in person, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that really depends on if there's new players or not. Like if everyone knows what's happening, then everyone can keep up. But then if there's like when the three of us played, and Dalton and I knew exactly that we needed to have military, and you did not. Like, and so then, yeah, you got beat up on a little bit.
Yeah, the last game we played a 3-player game. The last game I knew in age 1, so you play age A, 1, 2, and 3. I knew in age 1 that I had lost the game because it kind of is a very like you can just get so far behind, and like you were saying, you steal resources, and so not only is that putting you forward if you're the aggressor, it's also taking away from your opponents. And so it's kind of like it's a swing of points, or it's a swing of resources. And so that can be huge. And I want to reiterate a point, Dalton, that you just said, is that the cards, and this is a trap that I have fallen into before, where I was like, okay, I have these cards. My military strength is lower than my opponent's. However, I have these cards to make up the difference, so I will be fine. And that is not the case. That will save you from one aggression. And I think that is something very important to remember as you're playing this game, is that the cards will save you from one aggression, and they are not they're not always staying around, because once you play the card, they get discarded, and then you're vulnerable again. And so that's just something to keep in mind that I have fallen into the trap of before.
The other thing that can happen then is, okay, so let's say you even in just like a one-on-one game, right? Like say you defend yourself against like my aggression, and so you discard like all these political cards. And you're like, oh crap, like I need to build back up so like that doesn't happen again, right? Well, what happens is you end up spending your military actions to like build military units, right? And oftentimes that will take so many of your military actions that you actually won't draw more political cards, right? So then on my second aggression, if you're not, because you draw up to 3 political cards, if you have up to 3 political actions left at the end of your turn, like even if I'm just beating you by like 1 strength or something on an aggression, it might go through just because you didn't draw any more cards, right? And so because I think in my like early games, I thought to myself, I don't need military actions like unless I'm pursuing a military strategy. And I think really in order to be effective at the game, you need to be pursuing like 3 to 5 military actions, like getting into age 2 especially, because you need to have like room to spend 1 or 2 on like an aggression or on building some military units and still be able to draw 3 political cards every time.
And by military actions, you mean like physical, like you have civil actions and you have military actions. So you mean like actually having like 4 to 5 red dots on the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, red dots on the app, yeah. Yeah, so that I can use like 2 of them to do things and still draw 3 political cards, especially because like towards the end of the game, when you get into age 3, it becomes even more important because you need to be kind of like searching the deck for the types of like scoring political cards that will benefit you the most, right? So if you're only drawing like 1 or 2 political cards in age 3, like you're really hurting yourself.
Cool. Okay. So already learning stuff.
There you go.
Okay. So we're kind of talking about the politics phase, which is the first thing that happens, and we're playing aggressions and beating up on our friends. What other things can you find in the politics deck, or what other things can you do in the politics phase other than play aggressions? I want to kind of talk about this, because if you're not playing aggression, you're doing something else, and so I want to kind of balance that out, because there is an option. You don't just have to beat up on me the entire game. So, Smalls, what are some of the other things that you can do with your politics action?
Yeah, so you can either play like an aggression or war, or the other thing is you can add a card to the politics deck. And so those are, anytime a card gets added to the deck, another one gets drawn that was previously played. So, and there are things like was mentioned earlier. So the strongest player gains 4 victory points. The weakest player loses. They can be something that's beneficial for everyone. It can be everyone produces food. It can be literally anything like that. And then also if you add a card to that deck, then you get victory points depending on what age you're in. So either you can attack someone or you can get a free victory point, or up to 3.
Yeah, and I think the there's a couple good things there. First of all, the warm and fuzzy ones, the ones that like benefit everyone, those can be really tempting to play. And that's one of the main times that I will like look across the board and see like what positions are people in. Like if I play the one that, I'm like, oh, I really need like resources. And then I play the one that like allows everyone to produce resources. It's like, that's fine. Maybe I do need resources, but it's a really like resource scarce game. Like everyone always needs resources all the time.
Yes.
Right. So I really need to be sure that not only is it benefiting me, but probably that I'm actually one of the people who produces the most resources. Right. Because if I'm like bottom of the stack and then I play that, like I just benefited all my opponents a whole bunch. Like I really didn't help myself out all that much.
Yeah, it's very much a game of what is my net gain, not what is my gain. Okay, so that's everything that we can do in the political action, right? We're not
you can play
anything.
packs too. That's like the other thing, but like I don't think that they're a really big part of the game, so we can kind of skip
Packs. Tell them on us.
Packs. Tell them on us. Yeah, you can play like political like pacts, PACTS, and they're I don't know. I think that it's one of the only parts of the game that's like, that could have been cooler. Like that doesn't really work all that well. Maybe at high level play it does, but like I don't know. At our play, I don't really think it does.
Alrighty. So after we move out of the politics phase, you're going into your main action phase, and this happens in player order, which is I think why it works so well in an app-based game because sitting at the table, everyone is going to be sitting there for 30 minutes before it comes back around to their turn. And so that's kind of the downside of the physical copy, whereas you can get a ping on your phone or your iPad or whatever and play through your turn during that phase. And so talk to me about is it just like action phase, civil action phase or what?
Yeah. I mean, this is the majority of the game, right? This is really the meat of like where the game is happening. So one thing to note, I kind of plan, and Smalls, I'd be interested to hear if like you think about this or if it's any different for you. I kind of plan around like 18 rounds roughly, like roughly 6 in each of like the main like phases. Sorry, what are you smiling about?
I literally have no idea how long it lasts. I'm just like, this is what I should do in this turn, and that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. I think like the app actually told me that because it will give you some like stats at the end of like the game. And so like I kind of just started like visually like checking that and be like, oh, there's like, we're kind of hanging around like 18 or so like rounds, I don't think it's super dependent on player count, like because the game does scale the end of the game, like the number of cards in the deck and stuff like that, and just how fastly they discard and everything like that. So it does, I believe, kind of hang around that. But it can kind of help you for the most part. It gets like towards the end of the game. It can help when you're making decisions on like how many, victory points per turn is this thing going to give me versus this other thing.
So 18 actions, and on your actions you have
18 turns. Yeah,
18 turns.
rounds.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 18 turns rounds, and on your turn you're doing civil actions. So Smalls, can you talk me through a couple of the options you have to use your white dots on the app?
Yeah, so those, like, in general, you can use your workers to either mostly create resources. So you'll put them in to create more food, to create more materials, more science, or victory points are essentially, or happy faces.
Yes, don't forget about the happy faces. They get angry.
They're very important. And essentially, you are placing them into buildings to have them produce more things. Other things you can do instead, not with your workers, you can take cards from the river, or you can play cards from your hand using the science that you've built up.
So what are some of the cards that you can take from the river?
So those will be like different buildings that you can have. There'll be different governments. So the number of like people you can have in each type of building is dependent on your government size. And that also determines your number of actions, both civil and military. And then you can take the yellow cards, which are essentially like make everything else easier-ish. So like you can make a building with less resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, those yellow action cards are way better than I ever thought they were. I thought that like for the longest time I played the game where if I had a leftover action I would take one of those yellow cards because I just I couldn't plan ahead enough because the turn that you take the yellow card you cannot play it. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing this turn, so I don't know what I'm doing next turn. And so I think that those action cards are crucial to a good strategy.
Yeah. Especially like you were talking about how it's a resource limited game, and so that is one way to get your resources without having to build up.
when you're playing this game, like it always feels like you're behind. Like even if you're winning, like you always feel like you're behind somewhere, you know? Like, and so first of all, if you're a new player, just understand that that's natural. Like you're always going to feel like you don't have enough of something. And like just the pacing of the game, like the way it works out, like if you are perfectly balanced, like you're actually behind on everything or something like, you know, like you're always behind somewhere. It's almost impossible not to be. And I think this is a good place to like go into that a little bit because there's kind of like a couple different types of resources, and Smalls just listed like a couple of them. One of them is like literally like resources, like which is like your money in the game. So like that's a bit of a confusing term, but actions are definitely a resource, right? Food is your other resource. That's like how you make workers. You can kind of consider like your food and your workers kind of actually a similar resource. Also because you can add workers to your pool. So then like, you know, workers could be this other entire resource. One of like the most devastating wars is war on territory, where you can steal like workers from another player's pool. Like, so if you manage to steal like 4 workers, like the actual yellow dots, and they move from another player's play area into yours, it's like, it's devastating. Like there's, it like, you know, if they're like happy faces aren't ready for it or whatever, like all of a sudden they have to make like 3 workers, and it's like, this is impossible. So they just have to destroy their build. It's bad. Like it's really mean. Oh, and so, but the reason I thought of all this, again, you're always is going to feel like you're behind somewhere, but generally the other like flip side of that is you're kind of normally ahead somewhere too. Like you have more of something than you really need. So like you're accumulating food over time, for instance, or you're accumulating resources over time. You have more happy faces than you really need. And then one of them is you might just have too many actions, right? And so the yellow cards give you a way to convert that excess of resource, like the X source of your actions, back into like usable resources, right? So you can say, or you can look at the board and say like, I'm really slow in like my technology or my science production, right? So I'm going to grab the ones that like, it's going to say like develop a technology and then score 3 science or something like that. So it's going to reclaim that for me. It's going to cost me 1 action to like draft the card, or maybe more if you pick it from higher up. But because I have more actions than I really need right now, I'm going to use that to like kind of cover this other weakness that is my science production's too low or something like that, right? I guess science, that's another resource that I didn't list yet.
So let's just lay out all of the kind of resources in this game, because there are a lot of them. So you have civil actions, military actions, military score. I think that's a utilization of a worker. I kind of picture that as a resource, or at least it's a lost.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's at least a sunk cost, like you're saying.
It's a sunk cost, right? You have just like kind of your ore production, money.
Yep.
Food, science, and then victory points.
And happy faces.
See,
don't forget the happy faces.
You keep saying
I
don't
keep
forget
forgetting about the happy faces, and that's my downfall. That's the only reason I lose games. That's it.
That's the one. Yep.
Right. So, and we kind of talked about it already on the podcast, where it's, you kind of have to balance all of these resources, but not too balanced. Is there any of them that you can straight up ignore?
No. I've tried. No. I feel like every time I forget about one, then I'm just like, oh frick. Like now I need that, and I can't do anything else until I get food. Like
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's none of them I would say that you can entirely ignore. There are some that you can cautiously be low in, right? Food production can be one of them. I would say like food production and happy faces can go hand in hand. The way to like deal with that is to have more tech, right? So if you have a lot of tech, then you can basically, your workers can do a lot, right? They're on high value buildings, and so because of that, you need fewer of them, right? The flip side of that is if you have a lot of food and you have a lot of happy faces, you maybe don't need as much tech because you can just kind of flood your buildings with a bunch of like low level guys, right? It's kind of a strategy. It can work.
Gotcha. So food and tech seem to be kind of, if you're going heavy into one, you probably want to spend your resources elsewhere, not necessarily pump up the other one.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Within reason.
It's not
like we said, I think
nothing.
military could be another one. Like you can choose to be at the bottom. You just have to make that choice very carefully. And the last one I would say would be probably culture production. You can choose, specifically early in the game, you can choose to be pretty low in culture production. If you're complementing that with like a high military and you're like beating up on your opponents, and if you have like the right, draws and political cards late in the game, so you get these really high bonuses, or maybe you complete really powerful H3 wonders, right, that score you like a lot of points at one time. I think you can come back from a culture deficit easier than you can come back from like a technology or a resource production deficit.
Okay, so if I'm going into age 3 and I have a way lower culture production, that's not necessarily an indication that I'm losing the game. I mean, like, obviously, if you guys are at like 150, I'm at 0, it's going to be a tough hill to climb. But
Right.
if everyone's at plus 15, I'm at plus 6, that doesn't necessarily mean I've lost the game.
Yeah, I would say you're not out of the running yet.
Yeah, because
on,
you have
know,
so
if
many other mechanisms or levers to pull to get victory points in the third age.
Right. Yeah. Assuming that, you are also like higher in technology and culture.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're above them in other areas. Yeah. I think you'll be able to leverage that to at least make a run for it.
Yeah, you can't just be bad. You can't be the worst in everything and expect to win the game.
That's right.
Alrighty.
Yeah,
so
the game doesn't have a lot of like catch-up mechanisms. Like we said, that's kind of of a downside maybe. But it's just like, it punishes poor play, and it rewards good play.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So we've talked about there's not really anything that you can ignore. Smalls, do you think that there is anything that you need to focus on and that it's almost impossible to beat a lower or like a lower production in this? You need to focus in food or you need to focus on happy faces. Is there something that you have to focus in?
Honestly, I think it changes throughout the game.
Okay.
Like at the beginning, you don't need as much food because it doesn't cost as much food to get new workers. But then then when you ignore it, then later on it comes back up. But you need the resources, like the coal or whatever it is, to build your building so that you can actually do things later. And then later on you're just like, well, I want to pay for this really expensive government, so I need a bunch of science tech, like that kind of thing. So it kind of changes throughout the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense and just not something that I've really thought of before. I was like, last time I didn't have enough food, so now this time I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm going to get Moses and then I'm going to produce a lot of food, and then you lose by a lot.
Right.
So that's kind of that's really interesting. So you're saying lower food, and this is all relative, right? Lower food in the early game, when you and then you want to ramp that up more so because workers cost more to enlist later on in the game. And obviously this is all this can be changed because if you grab like the ocean liner, then you don't necessarily need food production because that just gives you a free population every turn. So there are a couple of different things, and there are a couple of tactical decisions you can make throughout the game to change what you need to be doing. So that's interesting.
I would say it's a bit of a function of like the cards that you get dealt, right? Like everyone's starting position is the same in the game, but you're going to have like leaders that come up. You're going to have like certain technology cards that come at the right time. Like you said, you might get a wonder that comes through that is going to make things, significantly cheaper or significantly easier to go one way versus the other. Like if I get really early access to a lot of food, and then let's say I get like St. Peter's Basilica comes my way or something like that. That's the one that it's a wonder that you build it and it has a happy face, and it says that every other thing that makes you a happy face gives you an additional happy face, right?
Okay.
And so it's going to like make it really simple to just like fill out your happy faces. Well, now I'm feeling like, okay, maybe now I'm in a strategy where I can make a lot of workers. Like how am I going to leverage that? Like military can be one way to do that because I can build like cheap military, and then I can like send it to like conquer the, we didn't talk in the political age, we didn't talk too much about like colonizing, but that's a really food heavy like undertaking. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't cost a ton of resources. It costs a lot of like food, because you're basically sending your population away, and that like destroys them. And so having like cheap military can be like one way to like kind of take advantage of that easier than like other players can. Just like as an example, right? The other way to think of it is like, okay, if I don't have that, like if I'm just getting really early access to a bunch of maybe resources, right? So I have like this overflux of resources. Like how do I leverage that if I also don't have food? One way to do that is wonders, right? Wonders are like, they are expensive in resources. And like, if you look at them just cost for cost, they are much more expensive typically than like building a building that will do the same thing, but they don't cost a happy face, right? And they don't cost like a population. So they don't cost food.
Gotcha.
So you get to like kind of subtract that back out. And so if I just have a lot of resources, maybe that's a way that I can like leverage that advantage into something, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit like the cards that kind of just come down, basically just come down the river at you and how you react to them.
Yeah, so it's changing strategy throughout all of the ages, no matter what. You always have to kind of be thinking on your feet,
Yeah,
making those tactical decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's does not bode well for my play style. I I like to try and execute on a strategy. Okay, so that's interesting.
Oh no, I was just gonna say every time I've tried to do a strategy, it never works out. Like
Okay.
I forget about it about 3 turns in because those cards did not come up.
And like honestly, that's a really good statement. That's a really good thing for people to keep in mind, that they can't necessarily go into it thinking that I'm going to play the game this way, and it's a very reactive game. What is my net gain here by playing these cards, and then what can I flex into or out of in order to optimize my resources?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And overall, just as a note on that, overall actions will let you be more flexible in strategy in general. Right. Because like, again, if I don't have enough food and so I'm struggling on like food, I can like destroy a building and recreate it as another building. Right. But that costs an action. I have to take a civil action to destroy the building and then another civil action to build the next one.
Right.
Or like having more actions, again, lets me like claim cards from higher up in the river, right? Because they're more expensive the farther away they are. Most people will try to avoid like the level 3s, but if you just have like a shit ton of, like you built Republic or something like that gave you like 7 civil actions,
right?
Like you can do that, right? You can pick stuff from the top and like you're probably not losing all that much on a given turn. And then again, like if I know that I want to have like a military heavy strategy, I'm going to need the military actions because I need to be drawing multiple political cards in order to draw the aggressions that I need, in order to draw the tactics that I need. We didn't talk too much about tactics yet, but like the red political cards that allow you to give you extra strength just for the combinations of units that you have. Super important to have like the right tactic if you're going to pursue a military strategy. But in order to do that, you need military actions, right? So if you're finding yourself like really that you have a strategy that you want to pursue and you're not finding the cards that you need for it, actions are kind of the way to like try and fix that. That would be the first thing to try and do.
Yeah, and kind of going back to our other discussion, I feel like actions are hard to ignore. Like that's one of them that you probably want to be pushing and trying to get more of. I mean, you can obviously have too many actions, but it's really hard to go through H3 with 4 actions.
Yeah, I think that's losing.
I literally just in my last game, I was just playing right before this was like I had 4 actions like the whole time because I picked, I think it's Theocracy, I'm not sure, and like it was like, but it gives me a victory point, and I only had 4 actions like the whole time, and it did not go well.
Right. In a highly tactical game, having more flexibility is always a good thing. It's a good point.
For sure. It's one of the things that makes like constitutional monarchy like so hard to ignore because it's just like it feels like the perfect balance of like 6 political or 6 civil actions and 4 military actions just like feels right. And it makes it really hard to like do any other government in my mind. Like when you get like more experience at the game, you can like balance it out with like, you know, the like special technologies, the blue ones, right? You can pick up extra civil or military actions wherever you need. I've been really digging like Republic, which is the 7-2 plus like age 2 military for 2 extra military actions so that you're like 7-4, and I really like that combination, especially because you can like tech into Republic in a revolution for like 3 science or something stupid. Like it's like that. It's actually like teching into Republic that way plus age 2 military is, I believe, cheaper than just doing like the full tech into constitutional monarchy. If that makes sense. Like not the revolution version, but just like paying for it for the full tech is like more expensive than doing those 2 together.
So we've been talking about a lot of the cards that you can take using your civil actions from the row. I think the one other thing that we haven't really touched on yet are the leaders. And I think that this is like a pretty integral part of the game. So Smalls, do you want to tell us what a leader is? See, I did that. I only asked you because you just took a drink. And so
I noticed. I looked at you specifically like, I'm going to take a drink, so don't say
I literally thought you were saying, hey, call on me.
Call on me.
See, our communication, it could be better.
We'll work on it.
Nelson also just, by the way, went through an MBA program and still doesn't know what a leader is, but, go ahead, Smalls.
Okay. So in the game, leaders are essentially... They come from the river, so you'll pick it from the river, but there are different leaders for each age. And so they essentially kind of will end up guiding your strategy in a way. They're each based around different things in the space. So like Moses is based around getting you more workers and paying less food. There's like Genghis Khan, who's all about military. Mm-hmm. If you're one of the... Fitting,
That's fitting,
yes.
Yeah.
If you're one of the top 2 military, then you get +3 victory points at the end of the round.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
Einstein has to do with science. like different things like that. So they
makes
all
sense.
play into a different set of like buildings or different kind of strategy to go towards. The leaders only stay around for an age pass. So if you have a age 1 leader, it will like be retired by like 3. So if you still have him when 3 starts, then he will be kicked out because he's old and dead.
Yeah, leaders are also easily the most like powerful cards in the game, like for their cost, because they cost nothing, right? They cost like an action to take it out of the row, and then your first one costs like an action to play. But then every leader after that, so long as you have an active leader, the leader is action free to play. Like you get refunded the action when you play it. And so like because of that, you can compare, like you'd brought up Moses. Moses says you pay like 1 less food every time you want to like make a worker. If you compared that to just like making a farm, right, to like generate 1 food per round, it would cost like the 2 resources to like build it, but it would also cost like the like some amount of food to like make the worker, and it would cost the happy face. Like all of these costs are like wrapped into it. And Moses is like, I cost 1 action. It's like that's a crazy right. amount of benefit for like basically no cost at all. To the point where I think it's basically necessary. I don't know that like taking an age A leader is like 100% necessary. It's still like pretty good thing to do. But like if you just miss it, an age A leader, like generally an age 1 leader is going to come fast enough to like you can probably just grab that one. It's not like that big of a deal. But having a leader basically at all times during the game is pretty critical, I think, to doing well.
And also making sure that they don't die, because you're losing an action, you're losing that flexibility, you're losing just more. Do you typically build? Are you searching for a leader that fits your current strategy, or are you kind of morphing your strategy around a leader that comes up?
I think the problem is the word strategy in this, in that I usually wing it. And so if there is a cheap leader and I'm like, you work, then I'm going to take it. But like I have like favorites. Like in general, I like Genghis Khan. Like not because I want to be the strongest military, but because I get 3 victory points every time, and then like that gives me an incentive to be in the top 2.
Okay.
And still stay close to my other person. But yeah, sometimes it's just based on what I need at the time. And I'm like, you will fit this perfectly, kind of thing. Okay. Usually I'm not like scoping out which one I want, because in general I don't usually take cards that it costs, because there's the different areas of the river. It's like it either costs 1 action, 2 actions, or 3 actions. And I very, very rarely will take like a 3, and like slightly rarely will take a 2.
Okay.
But like if it's in the 1s, then I usually
you're a very tactical player.
Yes. Yes.
You see the options that are available to you and make the best of that situation. Yep. Alrighty, what about you, Dalton? Do you build a strategy around, or do you find a leader that fits your current strategy?
Yeah, I think I'm generally looking for a leader with like what I'm that either fixes a problem that I have, or like helps take advantage of like somewhere where I'm already strong. And so like Genghis Khan, like Smalls brought up, I think is a really fun leader, because he like allows you to build military for cheap, and then he rewards you for being like in the middle of the pack or towards the top. He allows you to divert resources away from military by like, you don't have to like necessarily like draft a cavalry card, because he will allow you to take advantage of tactics as if you have cavalry for just having infantry, right? That's kind of like the special thing that he does. And so like that's kind of like if you're taking him, then it's like, okay, well, I better not have a cavalry card, or I'm losing advantage of this benefit, right? You also need to kind of recognize that like later in the game, you may like be stuck with only infantry and you haven't really invested in like the infrastructure of your military, right? So just like kind of a caveat that you have to be like maybe aware of, like, maybe I need to grab a cannon card, or have another tactic lined up in my hand to like switch out of my like cavalry plus infantry tactic that I'm using, that I'm only able to use because of Genghis Khan.
Gotcha.
But yeah, in general, I would agree. Like I won't take a leader from like the 3 action slot until like the 3rd age, if it's like a really good one, like if it's like Sid Meier, and I have like already age 3 computers or something like that. Sid Meier says that your technology, your science producing buildings, whatever they're called, like your labs, that's what they are. Your labs produce culture equal to their age, and then they produce 1 less science, right? So your age 3 labs now produce, instead of producing 5 science, they produce 4 science and 3 culture, which is like, that's crazy. Like I'm totally gonna do that. Like it's absolutely worth it. And if I'm gearing up towards that, and I already have like the science card or something like that, and I see that, and especially if there's somebody else that has, that I think might take it by the time it comes back around to me, then yeah, I'll reach out there and grab it because it's such an amazing benefit. But I have to kind of already be geared up towards that strategy, right? Like I wouldn't take it if I'm like not already gearing into science. That wouldn't make sense.
You're not going to hate draft Sid Meier,
right?
Because you can get it's again your net benefit, right? So you're taking away from me, who has a huge lead in science, but also another Bill Gates, or that's probably a bad example, but another leader can help you better than just hate drafting that from me. So I've heard. Sure. Genghis Khan and Sid Meier's. Smalls, are there any other leaders that you particularly like, or you enjoy picking more so than others?
In general, I like ones that give culture. In general, just as a thing, like if I'm picking between different buildings or different leaders or something, if they give me like one culture per turn, I'm probably gonna pick it.
Okay.
I'm like a very just constantly build up victory points.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I see James Cook and and if I have colonies, or if I'm like, I'll just throw some more colonies over in that political deck so that I can get him to give me some more victory points, because he has 2 victory points for the first colony and then 1 for each after.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he can rack up some points.
Yeah, so if you have earned colonies, then he's a keeper.
Dalton, any other ones that you wanted to highlight of leaders that you wanted or that you enjoy?
Yeah, I really like Michelangelo. He's another one that gives you kind of free culture. So he gives you culture for the happy faces that your urban buildings produce. Okay. I think wonders too. It's like it's like urban buildings and wonders. And so I brought up St. Peter's Basilica earlier. That's a wonder that gives you every urban building produces, if it produces a happy face, it produces an extra one. Right. So the combination of those two, if you see those come in really early, in age 1, that can be a really powerful combination, because you can build even just an age 1 theater that's drama or something, and it's 2 culture and 1 happy face, right? So now the Basilica makes it produce an extra happy face, so it's 2 and 2, and then Michelangelo says that it produces 2 extra culture because it has 2 happy faces on it, right? So now all of a sudden your age 1 theater is effectively doubled. It's effectively producing 4 culture and 2 happy faces for very little investment. So even just dropping 2 of those, and you can generate 8 culture production, plus the 3. It's St. Peter's Basilica is 2 and a happy face. Michelangelo is going to say that it produces 1 extra culture because of its 1 happy face. So now it's a total of 11 culture production relatively early on in age 1, and nobody's going to be anywhere near that. Michelangelo is one that I will actually carry through a lot of age 2. Just because that bonus, if you're built to take advantage of that bonus can be really high.
So another question for a newbie like me: do you look to switch out your leader early in age 2? Is an age 2 leader that much better than age 1, or is it kind of, again, you have to judge the situation and the net benefit? Because I guess if you wait, there's always that risk that you're going to lose them towards the end of the age.
Yeah, for sure. And you can also lose it, and starting in age 2, you can lose it to iconoclasm, right? And which is the one, it's anyone who doesn't have a leader from this age loses it.
That's a bummer.
It's a political card that destroys leaders from age 1, during age 2, basically. Or it can be used in age, it can be put in the deck and be drawn in age 3, and it'll destroy age 2 leaders. It can work that way too. I think that they are really strong, the age 2 leaders. Some of them feel like a strict upgrade, right? Where Isaac Newton feels like a strict upgrade of Leonardo da Vinci, right? Where it's they both have tech benefits, and Isaac Newton's just kind of better at it.
Gotcha.
So in one sense, it's okay, I can basically spend 1 action to just upgrade my leader, and get the same benefit, but just continue. You just have to then kind of make the determination of okay, have I gotten the benefit that I needed in my engine out of Leonardo da Vinci, and would I be better suited by waiting for Napoleon, right, who has these crazy military benefits and can generate a ton of strength really quickly? Would I be better suited to wait for another leader?
Are you kind of along the same lines of thought there, Smalls?
Yeah, I think also definitely I've grabbed a leader and just held on to it, waiting, because I'm this isn't as good of a benefit as I'm getting right now. Or if I play this one. If it's say you're getting culture or whatever, and it's if I keep the one I have right now, I get 3 culture, and if I replace it, I get 2. But I know I have to replace it sometime this age. I will risk it for the biscuit for that one culture point.
Yeah.
And keep it and just like hold it in my hand.
I think a good example of that for me is like Robespierre, right? Who is like the revolution guy. And it's like, well, I don't really have a reason to play him until like I also have a government in my hand to like cause a revolution, right? And his like benefit is so like instantaneous that generally you want to like play him, use it, and then like get rid of him, because like you don't really like he's not giving you like an ongoing benefit. He lets you perform a revolution using military actions instead of civil actions. But he doesn't have like, and he gives you like 3 victory points for doing that or something like that. But he doesn't, you're not going to sit there and just do revolution after revolution. Like that's a terrible use of your time.
Try me.
Right. It is really satisfying. I have like done a revolution into like Republic before, right? Because it costs like, again, that 3. I mentioned that I really like this combination of like Republic and Age 2 warfare. So you can do the revolution. So now you have 7 civil actions and like no military actions. But then you can play the blue card warfare, gaining you like military actions, and then you can spend those military actions like within the same turn. Like, that's a really it's like a 3-card thing, but like, when you pull it off, it's really satisfying.
That's awesome. We've kind of already talked a little bit about some of the combinations, like Michelangelo and St. Peter's Ballista.
Basilica?
Yeah, I think,
Basilica?
No, I think it's a ballista. Right? As I was saying it, I knew it was wrong. Are there any other combinations that you all look for between, maybe not necessarily like wonders and leaders, but I feel like leaders, kind of what I've gathered from the conversation, is that they can pair pretty well with a lot of things in the game. So what are some of those other combinations that you are looking for?
So first of all, you had mentioned the deck in the game is always the same. So in the like draw deck, you do work through, like you will see every leader and you will see every wonder in a given game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What changes is like the copies of like repetitive copies. So like there will be more copies of like given technologies and stuff like that. So you're not always going to see like 3 coal cards, right? Like that's not going to happen. But the leaders and the wonders do stay the same. And so you can, in like Age 3, look for, like I mentioned Sid Meier's earlier. He pairs really well with the Internet Wonder, which is like you immediately score culture equal to all of the science and culture produced by all of your urban buildings, plus like any strength bonuses that they provide. Right. So if you have Sid Meier's, and again, that like, a really high level lab, then you're producing 4 science and 3 culture for a total of 7. Right. And so each of those buildings is going to score you 7 points when you actually build the Internet Wonder.
Wow.
It's also a relatively cheap wonder. It's like, I think it's like 2, 3, 4, 3, 2 or something like that. So it's like, it's resources. It's not that expensive to build for like an H3 wonder. The other one that I think you can look for is like Charlie Chaplin, who doubles like your highest theater. Right. So if like you have movies out, then Charlie Chaplin says that the highest level one produces an extra. It's like having an extra, theater there. So instead of producing 4, it would produce 8. And then that comboed with Hollywood, right? Which is that like your library, you immediately score culture equal to like double the amount that your theaters and libraries produce or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So all of a sudden Charlie Chaplin is like adding, first of all, he's adding 4 per turn for you, but he's adding 8 to the total score from just that one wonder.
Yeah.
Plus, he has a happy face.
Oh, and
actually, he might have 2.
That wins you the game.
Right. I've actually drafted, like, I've gotten hit by, like, the War on Territory, like, lost dudes, been like, how the heck am I going to, like, make enough happy faces to not just die? And then just, like, taken Charlie Chaplin and played him for just, like, the 2 happy faces.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
Any combinations that you look for, Smalls?
Not on purpose.
It's happy accidents, everything.
They just
you
happen.
like the Bob Ross leader.
Yeah, they just happen or they don't. I don't.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. I want to talk about the app versus the physical game here in this episode. So the physical game and the app have a couple of different rules. Dalton, do you want to run through a couple of the rule changes that the app makes so that it's a little bit easier for people to play?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, like, it does make some just like strict rebalancing changes. So like I think it's like Library of Alexandria, and like some of the like wonders just like are actually different, and
I didn't
most
know
of that. Yeah, like if you like just look at the card in the game versus what it does on the app, like it is different.
That would be really good to know for people playing the actual game or something.
Right. Most of it's not like, in terms of like the strategies that we've talked about and stuff, like it's not going to super impact, like they do the same relative things, they just might have like one or 2 like small like balancing differences, like in their cost or something like that. So it does make that. The bigger thing that it does is it just makes it more like it makes it more asynchronous play friendly. So like, for instance, when you, in the like physical board game, when you bid on a colony, you just like go around the table and people can up the bid until, everybody backs out and then that person wins. In like the asynchronous mode, like it makes everybody make a blind bid just one time. And then, whoever has the highest one wins kind of thing. So it makes like some small changes. I think for the most part, it does a really good job of keeping the spirit of the rules. It'll just change it so that it's like more friendly to play in like, an asynchronous mode where like I'm taking my turn and then I pass it and then you take your turn like a day later.
Does that change any of the strategy that we have talked about today? I think the only thing that I can think of is bidding, because I think that you can kind of get a feel at the table of what people are willing to risk a bit more than the blind bid. So if you're going around, I'm thinking about my bid. I say, I will bid 2 military for this colony. Smalls immediately says 3. Then Dalton has to think about it and bids 4. Like, I get more information just by understanding how long it takes people, what calculations they're doing to try and figure out what they're going into their strategy with. It actually changes the rule as well, right? So if I bid 4 for the colony, Smalls bids 4 for the colony, and Dalton bids 3, whoever is first in turn order actually wins. Whereas in the physical copy of the game, you would actually have to up the bid. So you can actually win colonies for a little bit cheaper on the app.
I was just going to say, I think it's like, what is your max bid that you would bid on this?
Right.
Because you don't have to pay what you bid. It's just you pay one more than the last one.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, you can also like run the bid up on people around the table, right? That's like an actually important strategy. That if somebody like bids 1, it's like, well, I don't really want it, but I'm not going to give it to you for 1. Right? Like, I'm not going to let you do that, And so there's like a little bit of that going on, and there's also some like if you're going back and forth at the table, there's a bit of math going on in your head. Like, well, if I run this up and then I let him take it for like 8, right? I'm now going to have a lot stronger military, and I'm going before Nelson does,
right?
And I can play this aggression and take advantage of the fact that he like kind of misplayed and bid too high in this colony. That's a little harder to like kind of play some of those games in the blind bid.
Yeah, that's like 3D chess over here. Like, yeah, running up a bid on a colony that you don't even want because you have an aggression that you want to play, and they need to sacrifice military units. That's a strategy right there. I love that.
Because of that, I will bid higher on colonies if I am sooner in play order. Like strictly because of that. Like I'm not going to bid super high on a colony if I'm way back on the table, because everybody's going to have a chance to take advantage of the fact that I just lost a bunch of military power.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good strategy.
That's smart. Yeah. I totally do that too. Definitely.
My decision on colony is very one-dimensional. It's like, ooh, that looks cool, or nah. Okay, so that's interesting. Any other changes that between the app and the physical copy?
I think I'm meaner on the app.
You don't have to look someone in the eye.
That's right. You don't have to look them in the eye as you play this huge like war or something. I think Smalls has been on the receiving end of that.
Yes, I have, and it was very rude.
Yeah, it's easier to declare war on someone 12 states away than it is sitting across the table within swinging distance.
Right. Can I still sleep in your bed upstairs? Like, will you still feed me dinner, please?
Sorry, you need to get out.
Oh man, that's pretty funny.
One thing I don't think was said is the app makes it so much faster.
Yeah, definitely.
Elaborate on that. So why is it faster on the app versus a physical copy?
There's just so much adding of like resource production and stuff like that it does for you instead of you having to do it yourself. Like I think that's a lot of it. Is just like having to, in between each turn, like having to up everyone's resource, up their counts, and move all the cards and stuff like that.
Yeah, Through the Ages does a great job of simulating building a civilization. And what comes with that in a physical copy is it is so tedious to move all of the little cubes, the resources, the workers, the moving the cards, that the app just cleans it up. And so how long does it take for you all to play a game of Through the Ages on the app?
Oh man, if I'm playing like against computers, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes, like, because the computers move pretty quick most of the time. You know?
Yeah, I started like an hour before this, and then I took a call from my sister during that time, and I still finished by the time we got here. So here we are.
And I think that I have not played a physical copy of Through the Ages in less than 4 hours.
Right.
So, I mean, like, we talked a little bit about it in our virtual episode, but I mean, like, when an app can take time off, that's always a good thing. And Through the Ages takes literally hours off of the gameplay.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Huge point.
Sure. Plus, you don't have to understand how happy faces work because it'll do it.
It just does it for you.
Yep.
And they look angry when you're about to lose. So
Yeah. You're like, oh, I see now why that's a bad thing. There's
and
also
then it'll even warn you. It'll be like, they're about to revolt, and this is very bad for you. Are you sure you want to do this?
Are you absolutely sure?
Yeah.
Like, would you rather just surrender?
I feel like I remember you asking me what revolting people did, and I was like, I have no idea. I've never let it happen.
It's not worth it.
I just know it's terrible.
Yeah, it is made to be like prohibitive. In the rule book, it even says something like, "Do not let this happen." Like, this is intentionally prohibitive.
The last part about the gameplay and the app that I wanted to bring up is that Through the Ages is meant to be able to rewind your actions because there's so much going on, and you in the physical copy you have to remember exactly what you did, whereas on the app there's a undo button, and until you hit end turn you can undo as much as you want, change everything. And so that also will save a bunch of time. That leads into cutting so many hours off, but it also helps like, oh shit, what did I do? Where did I get these resources? What did I do there?
Yeah. There's a lot of times in the physical game where you're like, I'm just gonna end my turn because like I don't know how to undo all this crap that I did.
I'm sorry.
I think one of the last things I want to add on is that it does a really good job of displaying the other players' positions to you in like a really succinct and summarized way. And when you're like in the physical copy, it can be really hard because there's like all these different levels of buildings, and it's like, okay, how many resources do they have piled up and where, and like how many workers do they have? Like I have to do all this math in my head to figure out like where they are at and how, again, like if I'm making that decision of like I want to play the political card where everybody produces resources, I can hit the button, it tells me how much everybody makes instead of like looking around and trying to like work that out, so that can save a lot of time. Especially it's all public information, it's like things that I could know. It's just difficult to know in the physical game, and the app makes it easy to know. And so I think that just kind of overall kind of heightens the experience.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so looking outside of the normal gameplay, one of the other things that the app kind of gives us are these challenge modes. So I have actually not played a lot of these, so Smalls, I want you to describe what these are.
Yeah, I've played a fair few of these.
Is that an understatement?
Maybe. So there's a bunch of different challenges, and they, in some ways, completely change the game. Like one of them is essentially if a wonder, like it doesn't cost you more, or like it doesn't cost you as much to take wonders, but if the wonder leaves the river, like the computers are not allowed to take wonders, but if a wonder leaves the river, then the computers are like benefited in some way, like they go up in military or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it is, but so then you're just like, I'm gonna build all these wonders. That is the only thing that I am doing right now. Like that is my strategy, is building wonders. And then there's like games that it's like just everything costs like 30% less. Like just like every card costs less. So you're just like playing as many cards as possible. There's ones that it's like they like the 7 deadly sins or whatever. It's like someone's gluttony and they have like +2 food production.
Oh,
and
that's
then
really
someone is
wrath
and they have +2 military or like stuff like that. And so it's like
okay.
You have to go. And then there's one where you can only choose one leader for the entire time.
Oh wow.
Like kind of thing, and they stay with you the whole time, but like you can only choose one.
So who's the leader? Who's the right choice?
I picked Genghis Khan.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Genghis is a really solid pick. I do like Michelangelo, like I said, for that one. And then also I think Joan of Arc. I think you can make a case for Joan of Arc. She like lets you look at the top card of the political deck, and that's like the main reason that she's good. Is like that later in the game is just like incredibly powerful information.
Yeah, good old Joan.
Good. Okay. So
there's one where like the comm starts with like Winston Churchill in play, and that one is brutal. Like that one's just like if I had to choose one leader to like start the game with, I would choose Winston Churchill because he's he's like the one where you can like either get extra science and money for like making military on a given turn. He's an age 3 leader, which is like that late in the game. It's like still helpful, but like maybe not that big of a deal. Or you just like score 3 culture, right? So, but like that, like way early in the game, they can like ramp up in military or just score culture every turn throughout the whole game. It's like, golly. Have you like beaten them all, Smalls?
No.
Me either. Like there's some that
yeah.
are really, really hard.
And there's like levels of each one, and so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, they're crazy. They're fun. You will lose a lot. Like they're like, and it's just like even just like the getting wonders. It's like, okay, what does that mean that I have to do with my life? Like that just means I need so much coal, and then the blue technology that lets you build multiple levels of it at once, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you got to know which ones to go for and which ones to just let it go. Like you cannot
take the
physically
hit.
build them all.
I think they're really good at like kind of forcing the problem solving. I think the only like problem with them is like sometimes you can do what Smalls is saying. You can be like, oh, I know that I will need these things, and then like they just don't come. You know, like you just don't get the right cards in the river, and you're like, ah, fuck it, and just like you have to just start over. Like there's not a way to like, you know, because there's not a way to force things to happen in the game. Like it is supposed to be really flexible, so that like if you sometimes you can see the solution in your head, and you're like, I can't actually do it. So you have to kind of walk into it knowing that, you know, knowing that I'm going to need to like sometimes just restart the challenge. But again, they don't take that long, like because the comms are moving and because the app is fast. So you can spend 10 minutes and get into it and be like, I'm just going to try again. But I think as a like new player, they do a really good job of like forcing you to like practice. Okay, if I have either this advantage or disadvantage, right? Where like Small said, things are 30% cheaper. That kind of simulates you just have a lot of money, right? Like how would you take advantage of that in like an actual game? Or like if you know there's this disadvantage where you know the computer has like more military strength than me. I'm just always behind in military strength. Like how do I survive that and overcome that challenge? You know, like it kind of forces you into practicing that, and it can really up your game. Just like trying to get as far as you can in all the challenges.
So you recommend for a newer player to play the challenges, or are they kind of more for an advanced player, do you think?
I mean, the first challenge is like beat an easy AI, you know, and like the later challenges.
That's the one I'm stuck on.
Like one of the later challenges is there are no like it's something like there are no wars and aggressions, but there are 4 times as many like strength related events. So the things that are like you lose like yeah, exactly, like you lose. The strongest player gets 4, you know, like we said, the strongest player gets 4 victory points. The weakest player loses 4, or the weakest player loses a population, or, you know, like just bad things happening if you're weak. And then it starts all your opponents at +4 strength. And it's like, well, fuck, like, age 1, like you might max out at like 7 or 8 strength, right? Like that's a really good position in like age 1.
Yeah,
Maybe like 10 or 11 or 12, and like they're just 4 up on you. It's like, holy cow,
Wow.
That's so tough, you know. So I think if you're starting as an advanced player, you might have to like quickly play through some of the easy ones, but they will very quickly start to challenge you in a pretty rewarding way.
Cool. Do you all have a favorite challenge that you've played?
Yeah, so there are 2 that come to mind to me. Like there's one that adds in every age, it adds a copy of every yellow card, which just has like the effect of making the game longer. And then it starts your opponents at a high, like it gives them like a head start, so that like the highest level of it, they start at like 180 culture.
They start at 180 culture?
Yeah, and it's 3 hard AIs, and they start at 180 culture, and you have to overtake them.
Oof.
I've like almost.
I score 180.
I like scored within like 4 points and lost it.
Oh,
that's
like
so.
That's
mad.
almost like worse than getting blown out by 100.
Exactly. It's like, dang, I was so close. The other one I really like is it zeroes out your culture production. So it says you produce no culture, and then in age 3, all of the like culture political events produce 4 times as much culture.
Oh, okay.
So that one's really fun because you can kind of ignore
Yeah.
culture production, and it's just like build the best engine you can, and then at the end of the game, like see how much, you know, you score like 120 points on like just random political events.
Yeah.
At the end of the
How
game.
can you capitalize
pretty
on
crazy.
your engine?
Yeah,
That's cool.
exactly. So that one's kind of fun.
Yeah, that actually sounds like one that I would really enjoy. I think I would like that one a lot.
Yeah, ignore the culture, just make your engine.
Yeah.
Get rewarded.
What about you, Smalls?
Yeah. That one is not good for me because I'm always like, I want culture every time. Like it was, yeah.
I think Genghis Khan still scores. I'd have to check. I don't remember explicitly, but I think
Yeah,
it's
that matters.
like I think he bypasses the rule.
It's like that matters to me. I like the wonders one.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
That I said mostly because I just never really focus on wonders. In general, that's not a main thing for me. But so then it like forces you to do it.
Okay, cool. How many are there?
There's 9 different like sets, and then they have all of them have at least like 3 difficulty ratings.
Okay. So, yeah, there's a good amount of them available to you. Cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so last thing I wanted to ask just before we like wrap up. I think Smalls and I are pretty like I think we go pretty much one for one. Like we're pretty comparable in like the games we play. And so Nelson, like from your perspective, because you've played a lot of games with both of us, like how is our kind of play style different, or is it, or are there similarities? Is it the same?
We haven't played actually that many games, the three of us, but I think that we have played, or that I have played more games like one-on-one with each of you. And what I will say is that I think that Dalton, you're more aggressive. Like when I play one-on-one with Smalls, we like just straight up ignore military pretty much. And it's like, it's just like, it just
so
turns
true.
it into an engine builder. And let's just see how we can optimize what we're doing. We're on different sides of the world. We're not going to fight. Whereas Dalton, I actually have to like worry about that with you. But it's kind of this unwritten rule between Smalls and myself that we're not going to build up military. With the three of us, I think that Dalton, you do a better job of figuring out what the net score is going to be. And so I think that you will take a action that will score you less victory points, but score you more victory points overall in comparison to everyone else. Whereas Smalls likes to try and optimize what's the best thing that she can do to get her score higher. And so it's plus 20 points for Smalls, but it leaves 15 points on the table for Dalton, she'll take that score, or she'll take that move, but Dalton will take the 15 points if Smalls then gets 0. So
gotcha.
I think that is another difference in your two play style.
That's interesting.
And then like the last point that I would make is that I think that Smalls does a better job of building her engine throughout the game. So like I always feel like Smalls is ahead, and you guys do trade 1-for-1 pretty frequently. So that like Dalton has more hidden points where it feels like Smalls is always doing the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree specifically with like that last point. That especially going like into age 3, I don't always have like an engine like where I want it, and then like I look over and it's like, dang, like I really wish I had a Smalls' engine. Like just and like kind of across the board. I think part of that is because you're right. Like I'm generally investing more into like military stuff, and so like if the flip side of that is that Smalls has more not military stuff, right?
Yep.
So she like as a trade off is going to have a better engine, but also I think in general I think you make wiser decisions, Smalls, in like. I find myself, for instance, like I will get sometimes like levels, like level 1, 2, 3 in resource production or something, right? And I think that that's inefficient. I think you would want to go like 1 and 3, or like just 2 and just do 2, something like that. And I think you're really good at identifying that. And I like sometimes am wasteful in like the technologies that I kind of recruited through the game.
I feel like you are more long-term thinking, usually. And I'm like, what is the best thing to do in this moment right now?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to choose whatever feels right now, whether or not it fully goes into what I should be doing.
And that totally bleeds into other games as well, right? Like,
oh yeah,
like Dalton's favorite game, Smalls hates because they're high strategy, right?
No.
So
Yeah,
I can totally see that in this game where it benefits both tactical and strategic players. So
For sure.
it's kind of it's a fun crossover.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so this has been a really interesting and fun talk for at least me.
Good.
I hope it was for you as well. But I enjoyed kind of seeing both sides of your strategy and how you play this game, and kind of get the expert opinions. I don't know if you all are experts because this is a lifestyle game for a lot of people, right? Like people will only play this game and are very, very good at it. But I do think that you all are both very strong players. So it's been really fun and interesting to hear your advice going into the game. So just to kind of wrap up, I'm going to let you all know where to find us. You can find us on Instagram, Discord, or YouTube, or any of the podcasts. I guess if you're listening to the podcast, I don't have to tell you where to find the podcast. I feel like that's kind of redundant. But anyways, but yeah, so your best options to find us are going to be on Instagram or the Discord. If you go to our website, which is fantasyandsomeflights.com, all of those links are going to be up in the top right corner, or if you check the notes for the show description. There are going to be links in that description. So come hang out with us. Come talk to us. Come play some Through the Ages with us. We're continually adding and playing games through our Discord. And so this is one that I've been wanting to try and set up a couple of games because they're so asynchronous. You don't necessarily have to play these on a monthly game night. So we can play a game through the Discord. And if you're interested in that, come kick our ass. Let's go.
Try me. Let's go.
Oh, the gloves have been dropped.
That's right.
Oh man, I love it. Alrighty. So come hang out with us. We'd love to play and talk with you. If nothing else, this has been a great discussion, and I'm really glad that you all were here for it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, Smalls.
You're welcome.
Beat you to
Damn.
it.
Dalton gets all the points.
Right. I beat you
Yep,
at least
that
on
is
my
how-
end. There's lag to account.
Yeah.
You probably beat me on your end, but I'm just going to claim it.
That's fair. Alrighty, y'all. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.